Welcome back and thanks for being with us here on Morning Live. Now, towards the end of last month, the Unemployment Insurance Fund, or the UIF, said that it would be paying outstanding funds of the Temporary Employment Relief Scheme, or TERS. And the payments are for outstanding claims for the periods between April and September 2020. And it's also started processing payments for foreign nationals who have been validated by the Department of Labour and the South African Revenue Service, or SARS. Now, however, many people have taken to social media yet again saying that they haven't received the funds yet. They've also been complaining of having to wait in long queues to get information or to receive those funds. So let's get some clarity now from UIF's Acting Commissioner, Marsha Bronkhorst. Thanks so much for speaking to us, Marsha, and welcome to Morning Live once more.
Thank you.
So just starting with some statistics, how many of those claims have now been processed? Because the ones that the UIF had said that they would pay in the week of 15 December 2020, how many of those have been paid and how many are still outstanding?
The number of claims that we've paid up to thus far, we've made more than 13 million payments in terms of the Covertest benefits. It comes to about 4.8 million employees that we have paid. So in the period just before Christmas, the 2 days, in fact, before Christmas, we made a payment of close to 1 billion rands to beneficiaries of the TERS benefits. And then we have started paying again yesterday, so that we can continue with the outstanding payments. We do that on a rolling basis, as you know, and as I have previously explained.
But how many are still outstanding at this point, Marsha, and why? What are the reasons for these claims not being processed?
Okay. The numbers that are currently outstanding, I can't give you a definite number. The problems we have is still the same as what we had in the past, is the issue of the bank verifications, which I have explained at great length previously, as well as the fact that employers have not declared their workers with the UIF. Now, that's one of the validation processes. I cannot pay someone if I'm not aware of someone. And I have to pay someone into the correct banking account. So if that thing continues to fail, and we do put the message on the TERS portal to say the bank validation or verification has failed, please contact the bank. As I explained previously, we're a third party here. So I can't change the banking details for people on their behalf.
So obviously, for people who are watching and who are receiving those, you are saying these are the reasons why their payments haven't been processed yet. Are there perhaps any other specific reasons that you are aware of where people may not have been paid?
Yeah, there are others, but they are the minority of the reasons. For example, in some instances, the employers have declared that the people received a salary which was equal to the salary that they received prior to the lockdown. So we're not going to pay because the person was receiving an income. In other instances, we have had problems with surnames and so forth, which don't link always to what we have on our systems, what is with Home Affairs. And so, but the biggest bulk by far are the non-validations at the banks and the non-declaration of employees by employers.
So at this point, you do not have a problem with capacity as a UIF, because those taking to social media are still complaining about long queues, not getting responses, not getting answers to their queries, Marsha.
Yeah, look, I think it would be disingenuous of me to say we do not have a challenge with capacity. Like every other employer in this country, we are also hit by COVID-19 in positive cases, which means I have to withdraw people from the floor. I have to withdraw people because they cannot infect others. So we do have those challenges that we are managing to the best of our ability. We've allowed our people to work from home. We've given them the necessary tools and equipment to work from home so that we don't stop processing altogether. We're doing it, albeit not as fast as we can because of the challenges that we have with infections. And with the current spike, we've seen a substantial number of people being infected, and I suspect it will continue for some time.
At what point does this, though, become embarrassing? At what point does this become a failure on the part of the UIF, on the part of government to actually pay these relief benefits to South African citizens? Are there any time frames in place where you are saying, listen, by such and such a date, we have to have cleared every backlog and paid and processed every claim?
For me personally, as Acting Commissioner, it's embarrassing for any person that has to wait for their money, because we are aware that people are suffering economic hardship. It is unfortunate a reality. The UIF was never geared to make this huge numbers of payments in such a short space of time, firstly. Secondly, you'll recall that the Covertest was originally conceptualized for 3 months. It's now close to a year later, and we still have to pay people because the pandemic is still with us and people are still suffering hardships. So we're paying them as fast as we can. We do up to 3 payment runs a day to make sure that we can pay people the money that is due to them. And at the moment, the numbers in terms of Covertest, and I think we must make a distinction between Covertest and ordinary benefits, because the two do not go together in terms of processing. Covertest get processed centrally, whilst ordinary benefits get processed in all the provinces, the different provincial offices of the Department of Employment and Labour.
And every time that we have spoken to you about COVID relief, people have asked the question about, as you say, ordinary UIF benefits and the fact that there are complaints in that regard as well, Marsha. So with regard to those ordinary benefits, what is the problem there? Why are the officers seemingly not able to pay people timeously?
It is exactly what I've explained earlier. The workplaces are all also, all of us have to work in terms of the COVID prescripts and the health prescripts that we have, which means that you might not necessarily be able to stock a labour centre with a full capacity of staff. That's why we have increased in the bigger labour centres where the pressure is the highest, this operating hours, also operating hours where necessary over weekends. We've also increased the processing hours, the backroom work, so that people can work much longer hours, although the front end might not necessarily be open, so that we can pay people the benefits that are due to them. It is unfortunate the reality that I also have to maintain social distancing. I also have to have people who have comorbidities that have to work from home. It is the nature of the beast that we're dealing with at the moment.
So, Marsha, can you also please just give us clarity with regard to the TERS benefits and whether they have indeed shut down further submissions on the 31st of December 2020?
Yeah, the Covertest benefit at this stage stopped on the 16th of October, and our last applications were taken on the 31st of December, and we are processing. We have in fact started processing those claims even before the claims period closed. So we have already made some payments for the period before, if I can call it, before everyone went on leave in December, before Christmas time. But at this stage, those applications have closed on the 31st of December.
Just a question here from one of our viewers, Meeks, says, Sakina, please ask why some SA Express employees aren't getting their UIF benefits while others have been and are being paid. And of course, this has also been a recurring question with regard to how employers are dealing with the benefits and how they are paying some employees and not others. Marsha?
Okay. I'm not sure whether she's or the viewer is referring to the TERS benefit, but we do find that in one employer there are employees who are being paid because they pass the validation processes, but there are other employees who do not pass the validation processes. There might be a challenge with the ID, there might be a challenge with a bank account. Many employers have opted for the option for us to pay into the bank account of the individual employee, rather than to pay it to the employer who then transfers the money back to the bank account of the employees. So if, for example, you and I work at the same employer and you pass the validation for the bank account and I do not, you will get your money. I will not get my money because I have a challenge with my bank account validation. So it's difficult for me to say what the specific viewer's challenge is, but those are the things that we find, is that some of these employees in the same business do not pass the validation processes.
So what are the lessons learned here? Because as you say, when you talk about these verification processes, things like names, perhaps ID numbers, employers not paying over the benefits deducted from employees, what are the lessons learned going forward? And are you doing anything at the moment to make sure that some of these inefficiencies are corrected?
Yeah, well, clearly the lessons that we've learned is, firstly, the UIF was never geared to make 12.5 million additional payments to what they have been making in such a short space of time. So we've had to update our systems. We are busy enhancing systems still as we speak, so to make it easier, even for ordinary benefits, once we pass the pandemic and the claims for around COVID. To enhance our systems to make sure that we make it easier for people to apply. There are various things that we're looking at in terms of how we can make applications flow much faster, and by implication then the approval and payment thereof as well.
And that becomes an important factor given that we are now entering a second wave. In fact, we are in the second wave of COVID-19 and, you know, many expectations from the broader public. We, of course, await the announcements by government on what will happen going forward. But looking at your working agenda as the UIF for 2021, how are you going to cope with those TERS claims when the need arises? And also, can the UIF actually afford to pay out workers because people are asking at this point whether your coffers are running dry?
I think we must be very honest to say any institution must depend on the money they have in the bank. You cannot pay money out that you do not have. And at some stage, we will have to say the UIF can no longer afford to pay the Covertest benefit. However, at this stage, we've got more than enough funds to meet our liabilities, especially for our clients for normal benefits, we see that there is a rise in claims for normal benefits. So we have got enough funds to meet those liabilities. People should not worry. We will not be irresponsible with the money of the workers and the employers. We will make sure that we can meet our liabilities going forward.
And then, of course, Marsha, cases of fraud and corruption related to TERS. How many are the UIF looking into at the moment? And are there any status updates with regard to cases that we've spoken about previously?
I think you'll recall we spoke just before the shutdown period, if I can call it that, in the country. So at this stage, those cases are still in front of the courts. I think there are a total of 70 cases in front of the courts. We still have a substantial number that we are investigating with the South African Police Service. We also have started the process. You'll recall previously I said that we were going to send auditing firms to companies to see that the money indeed reached the right pockets, and whether the companies did indeed contribute to the UIF fund. That process has started, also just before the shutdown. So I suspect that we will have it going from, well, it started Monday again, going full steam ahead to make sure that we make sure that everyone gets what is due to him or her, as well as the UIF gets what is due to it in terms of contributions to be paid.
And perhaps a little more specifically, Marsha, currently the UIF has a number of executives on suspension, including Commissioner Tebogo Maruping, after the Auditor General, of course, flagged a number of issues during that audit of the multi-billion rand COVID-19 TERS scheme. And the Special Investigating Unit, they also said they were looking into issues that led to the suspension of these executives. We're talking, in September then. Now, the SIU was due to give a report back to the Labour Department last month. How far is that process regarding the outcome of those suspensions?
I have received a part of the report, and we have issued charge sheets to a number of officials based on the contents of that part of the report. But I've not received the final report yet. So for me at this stage to say anything more, I think would be premature. I'll be speculating as to what would be going on in terms of going forward.
Factually, how many charge sheets have you issued?
7.
And are these high-ranking officials of the UIF? Are you able to share some of that information with us?
I don't think that it would be appropriate for me to share at this stage which people were until the cases have been brought.
And then, of course, Marsha, many questions coming in, but they do seem to be very specific when it comes to UIF payments. Again, people complaining that they are, in certain instances, the only person in their company, for example, who haven't been paid. There's a question here about someone who was working on a contract, Ntlaka, who says, may I ask if you were working on schools to sanitize classrooms and we had a contract there, how could we go about applying for UIF? So in terms of education drives at this stage, what is the UIF doing just to assist the broader public and maybe help facilitate and streamline the processes that you are also struggling with, Marsha?
I'm sure you'll appreciate the fact that we can't do the traditional information sessions, etc., that we've been doing because of the COVID regulations. So most of the information, if not all, is on the website of the UIF as well as the Department of Employment and Labour, and people can get the information from there. We also make media statements. We also bring out information via you guys to share with people. So my advice would be lastly, people can call the labour centre closest to them. They can give them all the information they need in terms of unemployment insurance fund and how to apply for benefits.
And again, Marsha, and I know you are saying this as the acting commissioner, you are expecting things to roll out in a certain manner at the coalface. But the reality is, as people are reporting, that doesn't quite play out. So what do people do? And how seriously do you take the fact that the assistance that you are advocating doesn't necessarily come to people in the manner and at a rate that is acceptable?
Look, it's totally unacceptable that people do not get the service that they expect at the offices of the department. And in every office, there is a name of the manager of that office where they can complain, as well as the name of the head of the province, who manages the province and the offices of the Department of Employment and Labour in the provinces, who they can complain to if the service is unacceptable. I have received a number of complaints about services myself, and the heads of the provinces have dealt with those instances. So people must not grumble and stay quiet. They must complain to the manager at the office and to the manager of the province if the service that they receive is not acceptable, because it's not acceptable that our people pay their taxes and they do not get an acceptable service.
Well, Marsha, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this morning. UIF Acting Commissioner Marsha Bronkhorst talking to us about the Unemployment Insurance Fund, or UIF, and paying out outstanding funds of the Temporary Employee Relief Scheme, or TERS, amongst other things. We're going to take a quick break, and of course, we'll have to say goodbye to our SABC 2 viewers.